Syria's army is making rapid advances against the Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces. The military is moving towards the SDF stronghold in Raqqa. The army has captured the northern town of Tabqa. Government forces have taken control of several oil fields in the area, and there are reports of fighting with the SDF for control of the Euphrates Dam. Earlier, the SDF agreed to pull out of neighbouring Aleppo province. The lighting offensive has now moved into the Raqqa province. Syrian government forces are amassing heavy military equipment there. Raqqa is home to several prisons holding thousands of ISIL fighters, as well as significant oil and gas reserves.
The Ministry of Interior has entered the city of Tabqa with its units and forces. The objective is, first of all, to secure public and private property. Second, to deal with any mines or explosives left behind by the SDF which may harm civilians. And third, to secure civilians and encourage them, especially those who were displaced outside the city due to clashes, to return.
Well, the town of Tabqa is some 40 kilometres away from Raqqa city. The Syrian military is also building up forces east of the city, near Madan. Fighting's also been reported elsewhere. Syrian state media says the SDF has been using drones in areas east of Deir ez-Zor. That's another SDF stronghold in the northeast. These are pictures from an oil field near Deir ez-Zor city. Tribal fighters allied with the government have taken control of several major oil and gas fields there, including Jafra and Konoko. Al Jazeera's Amir Al-Abad is at an oil field in Deir ez-Zor province.
Having been embedded with the Syrian army and security forces, we are currently at the Konoko field. It is the gas field located in the town of Sham, in the eastern countryside of Deir ez-Zor. After the withdrawal of the SDF from the area, tribal forces briefly entered the site. Security forces, supported by the military police, have since taken the full control and are working to restore order in and around the facility. We are now positioned at the main gate of the gas field. Access has been completely restricted due to concerns over potential landmines or hidden tunnels left behind by the SDF. Security units are conducting a thorough sweep of the area. The entire facility is now firmly under the control of the Syrian government forces. Behind me is the main entrance of the gas field, where there is a full deployment of security forces, military police, and the army personnel. This critical infrastructure has now been secured and under total control of the government forces. Earlier, clashes had erupted between the tribal forces and the SDF across several areas in the eastern Deir ez-Zor. Similarly, the Al-Tanak and Al-Omar oil fields are located just a few kilometers from here and formerly used as a base by the international coalition forces, are now also under the Syrian government control.
And further north, these are pictures of tribal fighters in the Hasaka province, deep in SDF territory. The government-allied group says they've taken control of the Makada district in the south of the province. Let's go now to Zein Basravi, who's joining us live from Raqqa province. And Zein, we are seeing pictures coming in of those tribal fighters claiming control over oil fields, obviously a valuable resource. What is their role, though, in this conflict?
Well, what we're seeing now is a multi-pronged attack, a pincer movement by Syria's military, as well as tribal fighters loyal to Damascus, to the Syrian government, moving around SDF positions as quickly as they can. So SDF forces are coming under pressure from multiple fronts. Here in Tabqa, we've seen columns of tanks, armored vehicles, APCs, long-range artillery, anti-aircraft weapons, all moving in from this corridor with supply trucks, as well as military police, convoys of civilian government as well, moving in to secure these areas. And what it all represents is a massive flow of Syrian government power, military and some civilian moving in right now into the center of Tabqa to secure areas there. Officials here in Raqqa province have told civilians not to move around the city, to stay indoors. We have witnessed and spoken to civilians that are trying to get out of the city. Tabqa, which the government says it has now taken completely, remains a flashpoint. Since we've been here, we've witnessed gunfire, a mix of what the military here says is celebratory and ongoing confrontations with pockets of SDF that remain in the area. We've heard multiple explosions, and once again, we've seen this massive buildup of weaponry and not to mention a large contingent of Syrian troops moving into Tabqa and beyond. This has become a staging ground now for the fighting that is expected to carry on in Raqqa province. What the government is doing is now using this former SDF stronghold. It's the third major stronghold in less than 2 weeks to fall from SDF control back into Syrian government control. It is now becoming a corridor for the movement of heavy weaponry and of men further into Raqqa province. And what people here are saying is that the soldiers we've been speaking to say that they are headed to Raqqa city. We know that the SDF has blown up bridges around Raqqa city, trying to slow this, what has been a rapid advance. But speaking of that rapid advance, we are seeing signs that now the Syrian military is beginning to face more resistance from SDF units as they move further and further into the province.
Zein, it is remarkable when we look at these pictures and we see the enormous build-up that's happened even over just the last few hours. This certainly is, no one will deny, a very coordinated event, but as you have pointed out, they are obviously about to start facing a little more resistance, particularly around Raqqa, that is an SDF stronghold. And so we have also been hearing, like in Tabqa, reports in Raqqa that people are being told to stay home. What is the risk to civilians of being caught up in this violence? As you say, this pincher movement and this grip gets tighter by the Syrian army.
Well, cities that were majority Arab populations were never organically in support of the SDF. So those were easier wins for the Syrian military. As they move further and further into areas that are still under SDF control, especially areas that are more populated, the majority population is Syrian Kurdish, they are likely to face more resistance in those areas. The SDF leadership has put out a statement calling on people to resist, to raise up arms, to support this fight that they are taking up against the Syrian military. The Syrian military continuing to build up its forces while the SDF is calling for the defense of its strongholds closer to the Turkish border. Everything that is being said and everything that is being done on the ground is setting the stage for more standoffs, more flashpoints. And the further in that the Syrian military gets into Raqqa province and parts of Deir ez-Zor, the further they get close to SDF positions, the farther away we get from that political solution that Damascus had hoped would bring the country together. Any sort of dialogue between the SDF and Damascus, the interim government of President Ahmad al-Shara, that seems to be on pause as the military buildup continues to happen.
Okay. When we look at what is at stake here, Zein, and the force at which the army is moving and what they are trying to secure, these are areas, as you said, that the Kurdish forces have held very tightly for more than a decade in many cases. But there are now claims being made that the Syrian army is not just advancing, but it is able to claim some of these very valuable areas and resources, including, I think we have pictures of, for example, the Euphrates Dam.
That is correct. When we arrived here in Tabqa, the dam just on the outskirts of this town was still contested. There was still active fighting going on for control of the dam. Within the last few hours, the Syrian government, as well as the soldiers here, confirmed that the dam now is under government control and has been handed back to civilian authorities for its operation. This territory is rich with resources. We have waterways that are controlled here. We have this dam. We have massive oil and gas reserves, all of which has been contested for some time by the SDF. The SDF that thinks it should have a greater say in Syria's future. After all, they did fight in the civil war against the Assad regime. They did make sacrifices and confront the ISIL threat that ran rampant through the country for so long. But the fact of the matter is, in a unified Syria, the Damascus government isn't tolerating any sort of parallel governance or any sort of parallel military that is not under centralized command. And that's the fight we're seeing playing out now for the future of territory, for the future of Syria's people, but also for the future of the country's economy. And what we're seeing now is that the momentum seems to be on the side of government forces that are rolling through places like Tabqa.
Yeah, talk to us a bit about that being on the government side, because, as you have also said, this is moving really quickly and you're on the ground. But from what you have been able to, and the time that you have had to talk to people who are in some of these areas that have been liberated, how are they feeling about what is happening?
Well, so far what we've seen is that the Syrian government has come in. They have been largely welcomed in these Arab majority communities. But the fact is that so far they've been able to use the tactical retreat by the SDF, the withdrawal from these areas, to carry out this rapid advance. They have used overwhelming speed and overwhelming power to move quickly into these areas. But in Tabqa, there were mixed reports this morning. Government saying that they had control, but when we got here, soldiers told us it remains contested, and that was very obvious. There was still an SDF flag flying over the center of town. We could still hear gunfire off into the distance, and things still remain tenuous. The residents here say that they are leaving for their own safety. The provincial government in Raqqa telling people to stay indoors. And the military here is much more tense. Things are more on high alert. There were multiple more security checkpoints to get into this part of the province. We've seen a far larger footprint of soldiers, of military police, of heavy weapons, of columns of tanks, of APCs. So Syrian government knows that the fight here is likely to get more difficult as they go further and further into, especially Raqqa city, a fortified position for the SDF. And they have given up multiple strongholds in the last few days and weeks. But what we are expecting in terms of what we are seeing them do already, shut the water supply in and around Raqqa province, blow up bridges leading into Raqqa city. It seems as though the SDF is preparing for a siege, and that may take longer than a few days to break.
Zein Basravi joining us from Raqqa province. Thank you very much.
Don't miss out the full picture. Subscribe to Al Jazeera for reliable news and expert insights. Like, share, stay ahead.